Yes, millions of people in England are abandoning their dreams of buying a home.
Ownership rates have fallen to their lowest level in 30 years. So why are more of us now having to turn, I suppose, to renting? Juliet Dunlop explains.
Even in the late 1970s, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was keen to get more people buying. Back then, she launched a scheme to allow council house tenants to buy their properties. But figures today suggest home ownership rates in England have fallen 7% since 2003 to 63.8%. But how does that differ in other countries? In Germany, only 52.5% own a home, and in Switzerland the figure is below half at 44%. That's because a lot of people in these countries prefer to rent rather than buy, and it doesn't appear to bother them. So are our mindsets changing to be more like some of our European neighbours, or are we being priced out of the markets? Juliet Dunlop, Good Morning Britain.
We're joined now by property expert Henry Price. So what's happening then in the housing market? Why are we in the position that we've gone back 30 years in terms of our ability as a nation to own a home?
Homes have got more expensive and we haven't built enough. And it's as simple and boring and frustrating as that. It's basic supply and demand. Understandably, people are reluctant to find new homes being created and built around them. We've moved, interestingly, so the surveys tell us, from a position where people actually denied that we needed new homes. Everybody now, by and large, accepts that we do need new homes to be built. The only problem is that nobody wants them built near them, and that is the challenge.
And this idea now that this, obviously, as we said, we've spoken about the problem in London for many years now, but this new detail today that Greater Manchester is one of those areas that's had the biggest fall in home ownership, that will come as a shock, because quite often, you know, I know parents whose kids or friends of mine who said, I've worked in London for 3 years, can't buy, I'm moving up north. You know, I'll go near my family, I'll go and live back up there and I'll be able to buy. But if that's now not the case, what is the whole picture for the nation looking like for this generation?
Well, this Resolution Foundation report gives us a very clear picture. It ain't going to come as any surprise to anybody who lives up north that the problems that have been highlighted in London and the South East now work for them too. We've seen that investors, people who've bought properties over the last 15 and 20 years, encouraged by successive governments to look at property as potentially as an investment class, have found that London and the South East has become too expensive for them. They have then gone off and seen bigger rewards, bigger yields in bigger cities like Birmingham and Manchester. They have competed very successfully, I'm afraid, with home owners, particularly first-time buyers. So we've seen the number of first-time buyers falling from about 840,000 to just 514,000 in the last financial year.
Is it such a bad thing that we don't own? I mean, we're quite unusual in terms of the rest of Europe, aren't we, in the amount of home ownership we have already. Germany, France, all much bigger rental markets.
And seen as the norm, actually, for families. It's not seen as a stigma if you're still renting with kids.
Renting is now perceived to be acceptable by an awful lot of people, but it's by and large the people who are being forced to rent who don't have that choice. They don't have the luxury of deciding about home ownership. We have been weaned since the Second World War on this idea that an Englishman's home is his castle and that we should aspire to home ownership. That is very, very difficult if you're only building 140,000 new homes a year. We have aimed and aspired to build over 200,000. The new housing minister appointed by Theresa May, Gavin Barwell, has got a huge amount of work to do to build on his predecessor's work. It is improving. It is moving forward slowly, and house prices...
I mean, do we have the space in this country to build?
We've got no problem with space. We build over less than I think roughly 1% of the entire country has houses built on them. So we've got loads of space. The question is, where do we put them? And we're very, very conscious of the green belt. We're very wary of upsetting people by building them where people don't want them to be, but we have to find a solution. It's the biggest problem facing the government after other things.
There's a lot of other land that isn't built on there. There's a lot of brown belt land that could be looked at as well before everyone gets up in arms and worried about green belt.
We need to look at everything. We need a mix. We need imagination and we need some suggestions and we need some policies to get us moving.
OK, very interesting.
Or change our ambitions, I guess, and just take renting as being, you know, the way
We need the houses,
forward.
whatever. That's the problem.
OK, thanks. Nice to talk to you this morning.
Thank you.